Papa 130, go 20. Where you at, Denis? Hang at the junction. Hang on at the junction. What junction here? Junction 16 in Russell. We're coming up towards you. Yeah, repeat where you are, repeat where you are. Russell 201. Go ahead. Wait, you're right behind us. Right behind us. We've got a wee unit at the left at the junction of 16 and Russell. Are you anywhere near there? Do you go help him out? We're not able to understand what he means. So he's hit an emergency and he's out of my way. Shot at. We're being shot at, guys. We're being shot at. He's right on our door. Still shooting us. Still shooting us. What are we doing, Jim? Oh, it's all white. Bravo 12, go ahead. You can't get a hold of the supervisor immediately. Try Garfield Elliott out of Rossford or Darcy Davidson. Members are being shot at Russell. Up 10-4, what's their 20? We don't know that. And 45, I believe. I'm on route right now. Copy, 201. Copy. Confirming Russell detachment. I've got the 10-4-2-1. Not yet. I've got the NCO. Hello? Staff Sergeant Davidson right away, please. Where is he? He's in Winnipeg. Okay, thank you very much. Bye. Russell, can we get some more members out here? We'll call whoever we can. Hang on. We're on our way down from Roblin, 2 of us. Is Karen Telecom? Yeah. We get a description on that? Mr. Blackford or GMG5 with yellow brown plates, okay? Okay, just a second. We're going to need more members, sir.
You knew pretty early on that this was not a routine sort of event. This was not a routine story. This was big, and this was something that people were going to be talking about and following for months and years to come. And it also began to emerge just how important a role model Dennis was in his home community, for other Aboriginal youth, and I think that made his death even more monumental.
You know, I think it's important. I've been posted in many detachments, I think 13 in my 35 years, 3 of them being in Alberta, the rest here in Manitoba. Working on my home reserve for 4 years was a challenge. Each community that I've gone to, whether it's my home community or isolated post of Puckawagan, Cross Lake, Waiwisa-Capo, Roseau River, Nelson House. Each place was unique in its own ways. I always found that if I engaged the people of the community, it made my job a lot easier. As a policeman, I felt that was very important for me.
He actually kind of came here and he mentioned this tree to me and to his other sibling. This is where he wanted to be. This is me in the back row looking out for all these people. So that was one of the reasons he always, I don't know, for some reason, it was just this tree. As soon as we'd come in here, he said it was beautiful, it's peaceful, well-maintained. But, you know, you don't like to see people like this. You don't want to bring them home to this. But this is the way he wanted, and the community always, like it had a big effect on the community bringing him home. Like he's always considered Barrows as his home. This was his main place of being. He just really enjoyed and loved being home here, but this was one of the things that he actually, nobody wants to talk about death. Nobody wants to talk about what's gonna happen. But this is what he wanted, and this is what I gave it to him. This is what he wanted and where he wanted to be. Oh, Jesus. It's still hard. It's still very hard till this day. Still is.
Growing up with knowing this too, it made me angry with people because of what they done. Then I just gotta learn to become more acceptant of the fact of what they did, and it's not much I can do about it.
It's been, but it's been also like, you know, the biggest part for us is her not having her father there with her all her life, you know, and me trying to raise a girl, another one that doesn't have her daddy there, you know. So it's very difficult. I think it's everything. She's a splitting image of her dad. I always see that, you know. Everybody says she looks like me, and it's like, where? Ed was Dennis's best friend. They played ball together, hockey. They worked at a sawmill together.
Yeah, well, this is Corey when she was small, eh? We took this at my place in Barrows, eh? Well, my neighbor, eh? Come and told me what happened to him, eh? That was about 6 o'clock in the morning when I heard that, eh? Yep. And then, after that, I felt kind of bad about that, eh? Because he was just like my brother, eh? I was always with him, eh? Yeah. And then after that, they brought him home, eh? And I carried him in, eh? Into the hall, eh? They come and got me, and I carried him in there, eh? And after that, I used to think about him quite a bit. I used to go up to the graveyard, eh? Walk there just about every day to go see the grave, eh? Yeah. Yeah, I really missed him, eh? I was always with him, eh?
It was in Russell, Manitoba, that evil men came around. They met two policemen who they meant to gun down. That night
because I knew him, he was from home. That's the way I am. I just sit down and I start writing the song. And just what I heard happened is what I wrote on. Okay, I'm Norman McLeod and I'm from Barrows, Manitoba. I knew Dennis Strongquill when he was just a little fella. He lived close to where we lived. I watched him pretty well grow up. Dennis was raised by Joe Janai and Christina Janai. And that's about all I know about Dennis.
For he was the first policeman to come out of this town. There were things we'll remember, like when we played ball together. We were called the Paris Five Stars, and our coach was Cliff O'Neill. And that night at the party, Dennis would sing some songs. I used to like the way he'd imitate old Red Slavine. Now he lies.
It was extremely hard because my dad was like my best friend. You know, we'd jump in the car, we'd end up in like Mount Rushmore or something like that. That was the one and only person that I could, you know, talk to. At the time when my dad passed, I was already into partying and experimenting with drugs and alcohol. It's been a roller coaster ride, in and out of treatment centers, learning about different programs and how to better myself. I have my meditations in the morning when I walk to school, and, you know, when I get up in the morning, I have that first moment of silence and to think about everything, and everything kind of comes together. So I wouldn't have been able to get where I am now, though, if I hadn't have forgiven Robert Sand for what he did. And that happened like 3 or 4 years ago when I decided to go on that journey. I'm cooking full-time right now and going to school. My partner and I are going on 8 years this year. I take pride in my uniforms and looking good all the time, so I learned that from my dad, so. It would really mean a lot for me to meet Robert face to face. Like I said, we've been in correspondence for years now, and it would just it would put closure to the journey that I've been on. And I'm not saying that this journey is going to be over after meeting him. It's just going to get better and easier. And when I set out to write Robert letters, it was I'm involved with the parole board, so that when anything goes wrong or whatever programs Robert is involved in prison, they give me all that information so I know what's going on with him. So they were the first people that I contacted. I needed to know how to go about, you know, facilitating something like this. And right now was to get the letter out, and they got me into contact with Dave Gustafson in Langley, BC, and that's how it all started, was through him. I was ready to forgive, and that I'd like to continue, you know, coming to meet him was ultimately the big thing that's going to be going on. And then this was his response to the letter that I wrote, my first letter. And it starts out with, Ricky, I sincerely apologize for not responding to your letter sooner. It was not for a lack of trying. Your letter came as a surprise and impacted me deeply. I've read out its words over a dozen times and put pen to paper almost as many. You and I have a couple things in common, I noticed after reading your letter. I also haven't missed a single day without thinking about your father, my brother, and everything that happened in those dark days. I've lived a life of many regrets, but the loss of our loved ones and widespread trauma I caused is by far my biggest. I cannot change or take back all the wrong I've done. However, I can become a better man who has much to offer and gives freely to those in need. It sounds like you are doing some work yourself, Ricky. It is not an easy thing, and I wish you, us both, the strength and courage to continue on this path. Let both of our families' futures be full of peace, prosperity, and good health. They deserve nothing less. Sincerely, Robert. Strength and honor.
Mike McIntyre. I'm the justice reporter for the Winnipeg Free Press. I've been at the Winnipeg Free Press since 1997 and did my first couple years on the police beat again, when the facts began to emerge in this case of exactly how this played out, that this was an ambush, that this was not the police chasing the bad guys, this was essentially the bad guys chasing the police, that really underlined just how tragic and also unique this case really was. But I think more than anything, this crime spree was born certainly out of desperation, money. They felt they needed money, they needed to stockpile weapons, but also, and I think this is the key, and this is what ultimately had to do with the murder of Dennis Strongquill, is an absolute hatred of authority, and a feeling that they weren't going to let anybody, let alone a police officer, get in their way. And unfortunately, that manifested itself on the highway that night when they crossed paths with Dennis Strongquill and Brian Auger.
The last week has been pretty eventful, because now I'm AWOL and on the lam. Talked to my mother. She sounds worried and she would like me to turn myself in and go see a doctor. And as for my dad, well, I'm not sure how he feels. I just hope he can help Mother not worry so much. I haven't been able to write for some time because I left my journal with Dan to give to Mother and Elizabeth to read. So now they've read it, and I'm still alive, and I don't feel comfortable. Well, now I have two traveling partners. My brother Dan, who's sometimes worrisome, and he's very hard to control when he gets going. And of course, I'm with the wonderful Lori. She is so much better now, and so beautiful. We've slept together twice, and she is so good. But other than our sex, our bond is pretty quiet. I think because she don't let off with much, and I let off with less. But her and Dan get along well. They keep each other company. So let's see. I've got too much to download to paper, so I'll just write a summary of the last week. Well, let's see. I run from my halfway house. I've drove a half-dozen different trucks. I kicked the shit out of a farmer for his truck, but that was his fault. Because when I couldn't find the keys and he pulled up, I told that all I wanted was his keys, and I was going to get them. I said that no one needs to get hurt. Then he put up a fight, so I kicked him around and took his truck. December 20th. I woke up in a motel with a beautiful woman beside me, and a rifle and sawed-off shotgun close, and I felt really good, which is better than 2 days ago when we robbed the bank and went outside to only have a dye pack go off, which made me mad because I was so nice to the woman. And to repay me, she throws a dye pack in with my money. So now I've decided on a new approach, and it won't be the same, or even very nice. Now we've got so much firepower that if a cop pulls us over, he'll be one sorry motherfucker. And I feel so out of control, because I've set very few rules. So we can do whatever one wanted. We've got money, booze, drugs, and I've got my two favorite people now. Dan is great company, but hard to control, which aggravates me. And then there's Lori. I still have no idea who she is, but at the same time, I'd love to spend my last days with. Well, we've decided not to head west, went with east, which has turned out to be quite a trip. And we've got so much more land to cover, and who can tell where our path will lead. I've seen a crossroads that look just like the one I use in my mind when I have to choose a path. And I stopped to have a really good look, and I realized that's where I was, at a crossroad.
After I had picked up Dennis, we were now on our way to Russell on Highway 45. The Reserve Gaming Center was quiet. I mentioned that to him, and I said, well, let's go for our coffee and then make our way back. As I was the driver, Dennis was the passenger. And we weren't in a rush to get there. We were probably traveling normal speed, but it started to snow. It was just a light snow at first. In the distance, I had observed a vehicle come off the grid road. But as the vehicle came towards us, it didn't dim its lights. And I thought, well, geez, maybe we should just check just to be sure. As I went to pull to the side, I looked back, I saw the vehicle hit its brakes, and I think, okay, well, the vehicle's gonna pull over. So I turned around, activated my lights, pulled up behind the truck. The truck was slowing in front of me and looked like it was gonna just pull over. As I got behind the vehicle, put my takedown lights flashing the bright light to the vehicle, and was about to key the repeater to let telecom operator know that we were stopping the vehicle. But at the same time, I noticed somebody had stepped out of the passenger side of the vehicle. It wasn't uncommon that people do get out of their vehicles, but this time I see him get out facing our police truck. Dennis, at the meantime, had opened the door to exit the vehicle. Next thing I know, Dennis is yelling at me that we're being shot at. Startled me. I've never been shot at before. And I recall seeing a blast go off the windshield. And I thought, oh man, this is happening. Somebody's shooting at us. Dennis yelling at me to back up. I backed away, and then I spun around, thinking, okay, this guy should be now jumping in his vehicle and taking off. At that time, I noticed the vehicle was making a U-turn. I said, well, we gotta head into Russell. And I'm keying the repeater and thinking somehow my repeater system diverted to another detachment, and it turned out I was talking to somebody in Dauphin, didn't recognize the voice, saying that we were being shot at, we're heading to Russell. Now I'm thinking, well, geez, how can this person in Dauphin help me right then and there? We're saying to the telecoms that we're on Highway 45, we're heading into Russell, this guy's chasing us, this guy's shooting at us. Being from Russell, I figured probably the best would be to run to the detachment or get to the detachment, because that's our safe home, that's what I thought. I'm probably going 100, 130 kilometers plus in this vehicle. It's right on my tail. I make a couple turns, and I actually hear the glass pellets bouncing off my silent patrolman. And I'm right beside the detachment. I drove through the ditch, and at that time, that vehicle was right there, and it bumped us, pushed us off to the side, plugged up right against the side door, so the passenger side of the door. I got out of the vehicle. I don't know whether I was pushed out or scrambled out. I know I got out. Went to the back of the police truck and started shooting. The light on, I can still see the three of them. Took a couple extra shots as it was backing away, and then it scrambled out and took off down Main Street of Russell. I went to the passenger side and I saw Dennis slumped over, gaping hole in the back of his patrol jacket. I yelled at him, wake up, get up, moved him. He was slumped over. I don't know whether he gurgled or did something, and at that time I then letting telecoms know that we were at the detachment in Russell and I needed an ambulance right now. Waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Giving description of the vehicle, what direction it was going, hoping that the members in the nearby detachments would be able to come out and assist me. I joined this organization and I had hoped I would never lose anybody or have to shoot anybody. One thing I can say is that I'm proud of this organization that I've spent these years with, knowing that we lost somebody. And everybody that was called out and what I've heard on the radio, I'm proud of the organization and the people that I've had the opportunity to work with. And knowing that the cavalry was now coming out, we're going to find these guys for what they had done. But I knew these people were still on the road and they're taking the back roads to get out of Russell.
Got in. Today is the 22nd of December, 2001. The time is 4:19 p.m.
Yes, Alpha 10, just to confirm, when you get down to the bottom of the hill there where the place is located, the den's located, Just give me a quick blast to make sure that we're actually working here, copying you from this distance and with the terrain. Sarah, over.
Black sniper van has some in there. No, Tim. Roger, stand by. We'll pull up the officer commander needs one. Okay, we're good to go. 13 Alpha 10, is everybody good to go? 43, Roger. 244, good. Alpha 10, Sierra 4, as we get to that green sign, we'll have the den in sight. We're going to be stopping behind this semi. The semi is a block to hide our vehicles.
Roger, copy. Sierra 2, Sierra 3, and Delta 1 are moving into position. Over. Copy. Sierra 1, Sierra 3, and Delta 1 moving in position. Over. Roger, just to advise, Staff Sergeant Burt advises that the entire den area has been evacuated. Over. Roger, Sierra 2, Sierra 4, and Alpha 9 moving into position now. Over.
Roger, how are you looking there? If they were going to escape, they're going to have to drive through that ditch in a barricade anyway. Are you happy enough staying there for the time being?